Well, good morning again. If you're watching online, we're sure glad that you could join us this morning. Hope y'all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Sounds like everybody's got lots of stories to tell, and I appreciate you coming on in and having a seat so we can get started.
Thank you, Howard. I've got a question for you. We've been going through this series on world religions and stuff like that. And how many people have enjoyed this particular concept that we're teaching? Have you learned a lot? You're learning a lot? Well, hang on. Buckle tight because you're about to go on a grand adventure today on Hinduism. The title for the message today is God, G-O-D, of many little G-O-D. God of gods. About a year ago, I have a Hindu neighbor, and his parents were there, and she was walking, obviously with her daughter, and her daughter's becoming a dentist. She had a dot on her forehead. Anybody seen the dot on your forehead? I've often wondered what the dot means. You're about to learn what the dot means. And then, but anyway, she said, and I befriended her brother. We were buddies. Akshay is his name. And he loves me and I love him. Okay? And evidently he had been telling his parents and his sister about me and Carolyn. And she came up to me and she says, "Greg, I hear you are a spiritual person." And I said, "Well, I love Jesus, if that makes me spiritual." And she says, I said, "I read my Bible a lot." And she said, "Bible? 1 minute." And she runs back in the house. She comes back out. And she says, here is my Bible. And it was, Don, what was the name of that Bible? Bhagavad Gita, or whatever it is. You now know I'm not teaching the class, right? And then I said, "You wait a minute, hang tight here." And I ran inside and got her a Bible. Haven't talked to her since. But anyway, I know when I'm in trouble up here on the stage. And I was having lunch with a dear friend of mine. We're going to introduce him in just a second. And I said, "Don, I know you teach this stuff all over the world. Tell me in 10 minutes about Hinduism so I'll know, help me." So he spoke for 10 minutes, blew my hair back, and I said to him, he said, "Do you want my PowerPoint?" I said, "I do not want your PowerPoint. I want you." So today we have him here today to be doing some teaching. Let me tell you a little bit about Don. He's from Illinois. He was a teacher. He was a football coach. He was a principal. He came to know Jesus in the 70s during the Jesus movement. He came to Dallas Seminary, got his seminary degree for 40 years. He's been doing apologetics and worldview and world religions. So Don will be bringing the key part of the message today. Please know that we're going to hold him to about 10 minutes so we can take the microphones and come out into the audience, because this is going to be an adventure and you're about to learn a whole bunch about what they believe and a whole bunch about how hopefully you can reach them for Christ. So welcome my good friend Don Closson to the stage.
I'm glad Greg doesn't exaggerate at all. Let me begin by asking, is there anyone here that was raised a Hindu or in a Hindu home? Anyone? Because I want to recognize the real expert in the room. To live in that culture gives you profound information about what it means to be of that religious tradition. Second point I want to begin with. After you're done listening to me this morning, perhaps you go home and you read 5 books on Hinduism. You still don't know Hinduism. And in fact, if your neighbor, like Greg, is a Hindu, I would recommend the first thing you do in that interaction is ask questions. And then ask more questions. And then ask a few more questions. Because you cannot assume that you know the kind of Hindu, the kind of religious beliefs that person holds. It is such a spectrum of ideas and rituals and behaviors that mix and intermix, you just can't assume. In fact, I would say if your neighbor's a Muslim or a Sikh or a Jainist, you still need to ask questions. Because otherwise you're trying to witness to a tradition rather than a person. We witness to people, to individuals. Even if they're an atheist, ask them what they believe and why. Make them justify that belief. And what usually happens after you do that for a while, they say, well, what do you think? Now you have permission. They've asked you. We want to dump our theological dump truck on them right away. And that usually doesn't go well. So, ask questions. Well, let's get started. There's an author he's a professor, was at Taylor University, and his name's Winfried Cordon. He's written a wonderful book, Tapestry of Faith. And I just want to show you this, not to memorize, to give you context. Where does Hinduism fit in the world of religions? He argues that at one point, all cultures, traditions, you go back far enough, they were monotheistic. And there's good evidence now to believe. It used to be that people who studied world religions argued that, well, everyone started as polytheists, lots of gods, and over time evolved into monotheism. Actually, now we're finding out it's not the case, that there was a monotheistic root behind most world traditions. Well, it quickly devolved, and eventually ended up with Western traditions and Eastern traditions. What's fascinating to me is the Western traditions tended to stick with monotheism. They tended to stick with the idea there's one ultimate creator God. And you see the list over there, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and even Baha'i, which is an offshoot of Islam. They all look back to one guy. They all look back to Abraham. They're called the Abrahamic religions. And, around 2000 BC, this guy Abraham walked. He really existed. And those religious traditions are embedded in history, for the most part, especially Judaism and Christianity. You take away the Exodus of Yahweh taking his people out of Egypt and bringing them to Canaan. You take that out of Judaism, you don't have Judaism. You take Jesus off the cross and his resurrection, you don't have Christianity. So they're tied to history. The Eastern tradition is so different. And in fact, the more historical something is, usually the less valuable it is. It's rooted in myth, it's rooted in stories that are more about what kind of teachings will help you become enlightened or help you get off the wheel of reincarnation. What works? The East is looking much more at what works than what's historical. I was in the Krishna temple down in Dallas a few years back. And, they've got their idol there, Krishna, on the stage. They feed it. They wash it every morning. And I asked this young man who was there, who gets up at 4 a.m. to do all that. I said, these murals on the walls that depict what Krishna is supposed to have done. In one case, holds a mountain with his fingertip over a village to protect it. Am I to assume that's real? That actually happened? He says, if you want to. I said, did Krishna actually exist? By the way, some will say he existed around in the 3rd millennium BC. Does it matter that I believe Krishna really lived? Yeah, if you want to. It's not important. It's the teachings that are important, not the events, not the people, the teachings. It's also fascinating to me that Taoism, the Chinese religion, Taoism means the way. A Hindu will be involved in the Dharma of Hinduism. Dharma means the way. Islam, Sharia law is the way. And yet we know who the real way is. Jesus Christ said, I am the way. But everyone's looking for a way. Everyone's looking for a way to have meaning in their life, to find purpose, to find what was I created for. We are incurably religious. These human beings we are. This is a fascinating website. All of those little spaghetti lines are different religious groups. On the bottom left you find Hinduism. All of those of that color are different sects within Hinduism. You go around, you get Taoism, Shinto, up to the top you get Judaism, about 90 degrees, and then Christianity in all of our little groups, until you get down to Zoroaster and the Gnostics on the far right. We are incurably religious. If we got rid of all the religious traditions by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, by noon, I think there'd be thousands again. Because we have to have meaning to live. Humans will, and by the way, we all do church splits. I was in Tibet once, and my Buddhist friend, we walked up to his temple on the mountainside, and there was another temple right next to his. I said, why are there two temples? Well, this group says we spin the prayer wheels from right to left. This group says from left to right. We're incurably splitters, too. All right, well, what about Hinduism? What is it? What are we talking about? It's a name we've given to a group of religious traditions to the people who live beyond the Indus River. We called it Hinduism. That's not the name they use for themselves. That's the name the West has given to them. They're going to refer to the Dharma, again, their duty, their rule, their way of life. It's a religious culture rather than a set of hard set of doctrines. How many of you in your homes have a systematic theology of Christianity? Well, there's a few nerds in the group, yeah. Yeah, you go to seminary, you get the systematic theology. It says what you need to know about God, what you need to know about humans, what you need to know about salvation, about all these topics that are in the Bible. It brings all that knowledge together under one category. You cannot find a systematic theology for Hinduism. It's too varied. There's too many ideas, too many traditions. There's not one book. There's, in fact, no core set of beliefs. But there are three things that you generally have to accept to be under the umbrella of Hinduism. First, you have to accept the Vedas are inspired. Well, what are the Vedas? It's a group of writings that were written probably between 1500 BC and 500 BC. They're old, about as old as the Old Testament, and many of the writings there. So, does that mean you have to know them and follow them? Nope. In fact, a lot of Hindus have never read the Vedas, don't know what's in the Vedas. It's the root of the Hindu belief system, but it's not the way most Hindus live. They don't live reading their Vedas. There's 4 sets of Vedas, and you have to at least believe they're inspired. They're important. Another belief you need to have is you accept the caste system. That it's part of human nature. It's not something that some people came up with. No, it's the way we were made, or the way we actually are. When you are born in India, you're born into a caste. There's 4 castes. You have the priest, you have the warrior, you have the merchant, you have the worker. Most people in India aren't in those 4 castes. Most of them are outside. They're untouchables. They're Dalits. They're not even considered part of the system, the Brahmanic system. But you have to at least accept that that's true. Now, a Buddhist, by the way, is not a Hindu, even though it's an offshoot. It's a reform movement within Hinduism. They're considered not Hindus because they don't accept the Vedas or the castes. So Buddhists are considered a cult kind of thing to most Hindus. You have to respect and the veneration of all the deities. Some say there's 3 million deities. I don't know, kind of an exaggeration. The Vedas talk about, I think, 30-some deities, but they've added on down through the centuries. Lots of deities. Important gurus become deities over time. They just keep adding to the list. And cows. And you go, what? Cows? About 1,000 years ago, the Indian culture began to venerate cows as sacred creatures. Now, where did that come from? No one's absolutely sure, but it seems like it came out of Krishna, worship or devotion to Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about Krishna being a cow herder. He has lots of erotic adventures with cow maidens, and there are cows in the story, so cows became sacred. They stopped butchering them, they stopped eating them, and they started to venerate them. So now you go to India, don't kick a cow, or you get in trouble. All right. Let's talk about a worldview. You need to memorize this by the end of our session. I think the concept of worldviews is really helpful when you're dialoguing with people of other traditions. What's a worldview? Every one of you woke up this morning with certain faith assumptions that you don't question, that you believe to be true. And every human being on the planet wakes up that way. But there are different options for those faith assumptions. Maybe your neighbor wakes up every morning to believe there is no spirit realm, there's no God, it's just the material energy of the universe, that's all there is, you die in your dirt. That's your typical secular humanist, natural, or materialist, atheist, whatever. As a believer, the first question, by the way, of a worldview is, what's ultimate reality? Why is there something rather than nothing? That's, by the way, the beginning point of philosophy, too. Why is there something rather than nothing? That's a really important question when you think about it. How did all this get here? What's behind it? What's the beginning point? For a Christian, and by the way, I brought my portable cosmos with me. This is all the matter and energy of the universe. Right here, if you can imagine that, it'll help. As a believer, what do I believe about this box? I believe that a eternal, self-existing being, all-powerful, all-knowing, spoke it into existence. That Yahweh of the Old Testament, our God, Jesus Christ, the Father, the Holy Spirit, spoke into existence the cosmos at a given point in time. It didn't exist. God spoke. It did exist. Now, we also, as believers, with a biblical worldview, this is not God. This is God's creation. And Paul in Romans chapter 1 is very specific. He says, don't worship the creation, worship the Creator. There's this hard line between the creation and the Creator in biblical Christianity. Okay? So that's the beginning of our faith, that there is a God who's the only self-existing eternal being who decided to create. And we're part of that creation. Okay? Hinduism, especially Advaita Vedantic Hinduism, believes this is God. That the cosmos is God. All that is real is God. As I say here, Brahman, who's the god of Vedantic Hinduism, is the one infinite, impersonal, ultimate reality. God is the cosmos. Nothing exists that is not God. If there is anything that's not God, it's an illusion. It's Maya. It's play. It's not real. Sorry to say, but most of what you consider yourself to be is not real. There's a small aspect of you that is part of Brahman, that you're one with Brahman, and that's real. But your body, your thoughts, your actions, your behavior, all that's just Maya. It's not real. The goal of Hinduism is to realize that oneness with Brahman. Because all is one. That's called monism. It's pantheistic. Think of the two words there. Pan is all, or everything. Theism is God. Everything is God. Pantheism. All is God. So under specifically Advaita Vedantic Hinduism, all is God. You are God. If it's not God, it's not real. It's an illusion. And most of our lives are lived in an illusion. And if we take that illusion to be real, it's dysfunctional. We're not going to get off the cycle of reincarnation because we're not getting closer to understanding our true nature, which is to be one with Brahman. That we are Brahman in our deepest, most essential self. So, what are some other worldview questions? What does it mean to be human? Well, to a Hindu here, a human is Atman is Brahman, is the phrase they use. Atman refers to man, Brahman, the ultimate reality, the ultimate deity. Atman is Brahman. How do we know right from wrong? In Christian theism, we look to the life of Jesus. We look to Scripture. What has God revealed about himself and his nature? And we see what's right and what's wrong. In Hinduism, it's not so right and wrongish, it's what works. What gets you to moksha, which is release from reincarnation? What helps you get off that cycle? Because to be reborn is a bad thing. To be born is to suffer. Buddhism really focuses on that, but Hinduism as well. To be born and born again is not a good thing. You want release from that, okay? So, this concept of worldview you can use, and those are the questions you can ask people. What do you believe about human nature? What are we? What does it mean? People will have thought about it, some far deeper than others. Unfortunately, a lot of people today just have emotions. They haven't justified their beliefs, but it gets a good discussion going. Some challenging terminology within Hinduism. I talked about Brahman already. Well, then there's Brahma, the personal God, who has a dream which creates reality. Then there's the Brahmin, the priestly caste. And then there's the Brahmanas, the priestly commentaries on the Vedas. This is what makes it so confusing. The language is hard. It's hard to comprehend. But once you get a few of these terms down, it does help. It does help. Brahman. What do we know about Brahman? Brahman is the ultimate reality. We're all part of Brahman. Brahman's the only thing that's real. Well, this Swami says that no one has been able to say what Brahman is. That's real helpful. Swami Vivekananda, who's very famous, he came to the U.S. in 1893 to the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago, Illinois. They had it at the Art Institute up there. He started his speech by saying, "Brothers and sisters of America." He got a 2-minute standing ovation just for that. They were ready to hear. They were really hyped up for religious pluralism. They wanted to believe that these Hindus and Christians, we can all get along. Not much has changed since then. But here's what he says about Brahman. And basically tells us what it isn't. And I use that specifically, what it isn't. Because Brahman isn't a person. It's a force. It's a energy that's behind the universe. And that energy is within us. Sacred writings of Hinduism. 2 classes. The Vedas are the oldest. They're considered what the rishis, the religious leaders of the day, had revealed to them by Brahman. And I'm not going to go, there's 4 sets of them. By the way, the Upanishads, that sounds like a fancy mystical phrase or word. All it means is to sit down and listen. The Smriti, what's remembered is just tradition. It's later, between 400 BC and 400 AD. A lot of legal codes. The Code of Manu is in that, which kind of describes the ideal Hindu life. We'll talk about it in a couple minutes. The Bhagavad Gita is in this group. Probably the Bible most Hindus will give you. If they're trying to give you a book, it'll be the Bhagavad Gita. It's all about Krishna. Stories about Krishna mostly. What really is hard, if you want to devote your life to reading all of the Hindu manuscripts, here's a few. It's a massive body of works. Okay? And no Hindu reads all of these. Most Hindus don't even follow one particular writing. And sometimes they'll mix and match. Gods are named differently in different writings. They are often incoherent. They don't fit together. Why? Because logic is Maya. Logic is an illusion. We think we have logic and coherency and correspondence with the world. No, it's an illusion. Rational thinking won't get you to Brahman. It won't get you off the cycle of reincarnation. It's experiencing oneness with Brahman. What works to do that? That's what's important. Basic beliefs, samsara, we've talked about its reincarnation, the cycle of reincarnation. It's bad. Moksha is release. By the way, samsara just means wandering. You wander from one life to the next. There's these 4 castes, the priest, the warrior, the merchant, the worker, and then finally the Dalits, who are outside of the Hindu Brahmanic system. There are more Dalits in India than there are of all 4 castes combined. Most people are Dalits. They do the untouchable work. They deal with dead bodies. They pick up sewage and just the worst things you can imagine that need to be done in a culture, the Dalits do it. Of the last 40, 50 years, the government in India has tried to raise their life out of impoverishment a little bit. Still a real struggle, very unfair system. And by the way, if you're a Dalit, it's why? Why are you a Dalit? Because in your previous life you built up bad karma. It's your fault. It's all your fault. And for a Brahmin to bend down and help you, it's the worst thing he can do for you. You've got to work off that bad karma or you're going to come back as something worse. So to help someone in the gutter, someone sick, that's contrary to the Hindu system. You're violating the law of karma. And karma is the idea people get exactly what they deserve. Some Westerners really like this idea. You'll see karma in movies and commercials, all kinds of things in the West. We've almost adopted this, by the way. Very influential. And it's from our previous life. It's not the same as judgment or punishment for violating a kingdom's rule. Christianity, we believe we're under God's wrath because we've rebelled against his kingdom, against his rule. In fact, it's more like violating physics, a natural law. It just is. It just is. I'm going to slide through this. Often, the code of the Book of Manu says that the ideal Hindu life is you're born a man, a male. Why only males can reach moksha? Sorry, ladies, you got to be reincarnated as a man. At 10, you're considered twice born if you're of the top 3 castes. You put a sacred thread over your left shoulder, shows you're twice born. By the way, that idea came after the Christian era. I think they kind of copied being born again, but who knows. Then you become a householder in an arranged marriage. Most people in India have an arranged marriage. You become a forest dweller after your children grow up and leave, and eventually you renounce everything. Your life, your name, your kids, your house, your occupation, everything, and become someone who's trying to find enlightenment, someone who's trying to find moksha, get off the wheel of reincarnation by study, not so much by studying, but by practicing what you've discovered works. It could be just saying mantras all day long. It could be meditating all day long. But it's going to be some method that helps you get off the wheel of reincarnation. 3 ways to reach salvation: the way of works, following the old Vedas, the priestly caste and their rituals; the way of knowledge, which is Advaita Vedantic philosophy, which is, again, more philosophical, focused on yoga, focused on chanting, on meditation; and then the last one is the way of devotion, where you're devoted to a given deity, a given god. A good example nearby in Plano, we have a Sri Raghunath temple, and they have these deities, like this is Ganesha down here. It's an incarnation of Shiva. Yeah, incarnation of Shiva. And people will go there and they will worship that idol. They wash it, they feed it, they pray before it, they sing to it. It's worship. But what's fascinating to me, that's called a murti, by the way, that idol. The idol by itself isn't all that significant until after a ceremony is held. And it's hard to pronounce, the prana pratistha ceremony. Well, what's that ceremony? It's where you call down the divine essence to possess the idol. That sound familiar? There's something called the second commandment, Exodus 20, verse 4. Don't make a graven image. Don't worship it. Don't bow down to it. It's exactly what they're doing. It's exactly what they're doing. But until that ceremony is held, it's not worth worshiping. Once you do that, you can pray to it. You can ask it for healing, ask it for health, for wealth, all sorts of things. A puja is this worship service that they'll have, and finally, you're a bhakta if you are devoted to a given deity. So that's a third way of reaching moksha within Hinduism. This is a Swami Vivekananda, came in the 1800s. By the way, these are not poorly educated people. This guy had a degree, a Western Scottish group church built a university in Kolkata. He was a graduate of that. He knew Western philosophy. He had read all of our major, from Kant to whoever. He knew Western philosophy and was highly honored by the Indian people as a teacher of Hindu philosophy, of Advaita Vedantic philosophy. By the way, most of you are old enough to remember this. George Harrison, 1970, My Sweet Lord. Hallelujah. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. Well, what does hallelujah mean? Praise Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna is, I want access to the divine power of Krishna, of Rama. Harrison knew exactly what he was doing. He's pushing or promoting religious pluralism. Doesn't matter what path you're on, just get on, worship a God. Worship some deity. So, he eventually got a little bit involved with the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, big in the 60s, Probably ran into a few of them in the airports back then. The Bhagavad Gita is their book. They believe that Krishna is at the top, not Brahman. Everything, all the other deities are under Krishna. So that's why it's really hard to know. You've got to ask a Muslim or a Hindu, what do you believe? All right, so we'll go through that real quick. And other influences, I'm not going to. There's a big occultic influence in Western culture with Hindu ideas, channeling adepts or masters. Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, the first one that used the term New Age, and some ideas that now are. Do you hear people talking about the New Age movement much anymore? Why not? It's part of our culture. We don't need to have a movement. It's here. It's embedded. People accept it. Yoga. Boy, yoga's good for everybody. No, yoga was meant to disavow this illusion of a body and just become one with Brahman. That's what it was. That's the purpose of it originally, not this mind-body health thing. We totally changed it. Meditation, karma, reincarnation, chakras and chi and prana, vegetarianism. If you're going to witness to a Hindu, very quick, I'm over time, but sin and rebellion is really different from forgetting our true nature of being one with Brahman. Two very different views of reality. The process of this prana pratishtha is, again, a direct violation of the Ten Commandments, Second Commandment specifically. Jesus is not just another avatar, which most Hindus will accept. Oh, he's just another avatar of Vishnu. No problem, I can accept him too. We'll just stack him on top of the other gods I'm worshiping. No, he's quite exclusive. Our faith doesn't save us. Just having faith. A lot of religious pluralists, well, you just need faith. It's the object of our faith that saves us. And Jesus Christ is worthy of that kind of worship because he is the creator of all that exists. He's the sustainer of all that exists. He's before all things. And we don't even know that Krishna ever existed. There's just no good evidence outside of Hinduism itself that Krishna ever is. It's myth. It's not real. It's not history. We have good historical reasons to believe Jesus existed. He died on the cross and was resurrected. And I'm going to stop there, or Greg's going to throw something at me.
Woo! Give a hand. Okay, it's time to get in the round. Thoughts, comments, questions. Who's going to go first? I'm going to take this side of the room. Yes, ma'am.
My father debriefed kids out of Hare Krishna, and I got very close to Barry. We had a rehab center to help them get back into society. And he came out strong. He wanted to help other young adults out. And then when he got home, he got on the roof of his house and jumped off and committed suicide. So Hare Krishna is a very dangerous cult. And they're very controlling. And we've seen families ripped apart by it. And their philosophy is Jesus failed and Prabhupada is here to finish the mission.
Yeah, if you go to the temple in Dallas, you've got this image of Prabhupada, who is their guru. It's freaky looking. It kind of spooks you out when you walk in the room. You see this guy sitting there. Is that real? Is that him? No, that's not him. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, when they put food before these statues, what happens to the food?
It rots. They feed it to other people. Yeah, they have a community meal, the Krishna folks especially. You're invited. You can go down there and eat, join a meal with them. Yeah.
Okay, good. Peter, do you have one? Okay, go for that one back there.
Hi. Is there an evangelistic kind of movement in Hinduism to try and bring others to in an aggressive way? I know they try and do it just through sharing philosophy, but is there an active evangelistic type of movement?
Yeah, most of the evangelistic movements have been individual, like this Prabhupada, who came to start the International Society for Krishna Consciousness here, came to New York, but now has temples all over the U.S. He was a pharmaceutical salesman before he reached that final stage of the Book of Manu. You know, he became a renunciate. He renounced his life, came here, and he uses Westerners to reach Westerners. That's really effective. We had Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh came and set up an ashram out in the West. He found a higher power. The IRS went after him. Yeah, they send out gurus, swamis, who start movements. The Maharishi Yogi was involved with the Beatles in the 60s. In India right now, Modi, their leader, their president, is a Hindu nationalist. They are persecuting all other groups, religious groups. It's really hard to be a missionary in India today. So if you know of someone in India, pray for them, because it's tough and getting tougher. And there's a lot of violence against them.
Here's a question.
I'm interested in how to reach them evangelistically.
Yeah.
When they meditate, that's their form of prayer. Who are they expecting to show up, and who does show up, and what are those messages?
Yeah, usually the mantra is a way to connect with, if you're a bhakti, if you're following a deity, you're trying to connect with, let's say, Krishna. You're trying to connect with, and you're devoting to him, and so he'll be devoted to you. And it's a way of, most cults and occult and other religions are a way to get healing, to get wealth, to get power. They're the same. They're trying to do the same. Buddhists do the same thing. They're mainly looking for luck. It's interesting how that's pervasive. But most of it is to experience that oneness. And it's going to express itself in weird ways. Some of them do have mental breakdowns, literally, once they encounter the oneness. It's such an irrational thing. They're not looking for rational answers. They're looking for an irrational experience.
But the experience that we receive through prayer, if we get healed, we're healed permanently, and it doesn't go away. Whether it's spiritual, mental,
Sure.
physical, but that's what the enemy can't produce. And so I'm thinking that would be an inroad. The messages they're getting, how is it blessing them? What's the fruit of it? How are they? How is their life better? I'm going to go more that direction than religion, because this is true. So I'm thinking through that out of the actual experience. How are they? And of course we've got witnesses to
Sure.
prayer and the results of that for a person to profit, to benefit, anyway.
Just a short story, if I could.
Please, yes.
Dan and I had an opportunity to get to know a lady from Taiwan who's actually Buddhist, but offshoot of Hinduism, Pure Land Buddhism. And she had stage 4 cancer. She was dying. She went to her Buddhist temple, said, I need help. I need just practical help. They said, no, we can't help you. That's because of karma in your previous life. You need to go help others. She says, I'm sick, I'm dying, I can't do that. Well, some Christians, she found out that a church had a ministry to people with cancer, severe cancer. So she went to it. She said, look, I'm not interested in Christianity. I just need your help. They said, sure, no problem. And they started helping. By her 3rd meeting, she said, how do I become a Christian? Well, Deanne was with her 2 nights or so before she died, and praying with her and encouraging her. And she told Deanne, she said, I've never been happier. I want you to know that. She died 2 days later. That's the kind of response when you actually connect with the creator of the universe. There's a peace even amidst horrible suffering. And I think that's what's missing in some of these cults.
Might it be the purpose? Might it be the purpose of John 14, where it says, "Greater works than Jesus did, we will do in the end times"? Might this be a part of that? Because it's going to so outshine. If we can pray for someone who is terminal, wow, and Jesus shows up and heals them completely, that is such a contrast to what they're receiving in the meditation. I think maybe signs, wonders, and miracles might be one avenue.
Sure.
How many Hindus are there in the world?
Well, there's probably about 1 billion. India is now on its way to be the largest country in the world. It's going to surpass China.
This lets us know that Satan's alive and well. He's doing his work, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Because this delusion is just that. It's all delusion. Now, one thing you said is they believe that they become God. It kind of reminds me of Mormonism, because they believe that too.
It's fascinating to me to bring up Mormonism is a spiritual progression religion. That all of us, all of you men especially, can become a god as Elohim in the Old Testament is God. Have your own planet, your own spiritual children. But you got to follow the rules of spiritual progression. Whenever I meet with Mormons, I say, I want to know who that God is. Who made the rules? And they don't know. They don't have a clue. Same thing in Hinduism. Who made the karma rules? Yeah.
So I got an opportunity to go to India back in January. And I was talking to several Hindus about my faith and about Jesus. And they're like, yeah, bring it. We'll take him too. And so I think part of our challenge is we have to help them understand what's different about Jesus. He's not just another God. Right. He is the God. And that's our challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to get in your head, okay, who created all that there is? Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, but also the God of the New Testament. Jesus is Yahweh. Jesus is the ultimate creator, the ultimate self-existent eternal being. And it's very exclusive. We don't want to make any inclusive kinds of statements. It's not Jesus and Krishna, it's Jesus. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Guys, you can see how we could go all day long in the seminar, as Don does. Now, my takeaway from it is they're wanting to know what works. How do I get me off the wheel of this chaos and reincarnation to get to something good? That's the good news of what we carry. So I'm just glad I didn't have to teach it today, right? Woo! All right, we're going to have Don will be here for questions, and maybe we'll have him back again someday. God bless you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.